Morning, everybody. Morning, all. Welcome to the third instalment of our webinar series, Maximising Microsoft 365 for Hospices. Today, we're going to be focusing on powering up your hospice with the Microsoft Power Platform. Thanks to those that joined over the previous two sessions, and thanks for those who have joined for the first time today as well. Apologies if I'm repeating some of the bits in terms of housekeeping from the previous sessions, but just for the new people joining, we've turned cameras and microphones off for you all, so questions and answers can be filtered through the Q&A section of the webinar screen, of the team screen that you should be able to find. So if you can use that to filter questions across to us, and we'll get through them naturally as we progress through the slide deck. And there's also going to be an opportunity at the end for us to go through any questions at the end. So hopefully you'll get some value from today. In terms of anything that either we don't cover or you'd prefer to ask directly, we can book in any one-to-one sessions following this webinar. So if you want to get in touch on the contact details on the email that will follow, we can set up individual sessions as well. So please feel free to do that. For those who haven't attended any of the previous sessions, just to cover off the reasons that we actually put this series on for the hospice sector. Over the past 5 years or so, we've visited over 35 hospices up and down the country. We've also attended the Hospice UK conference for the last 4 years, and the Hospice UK Tech conference as well, which the first one was in February this year. We might have met a few of you at. So with the feedback basically from people being that they want to utilize 365 and 365 applications more effectively. So we've took that feedback and built this series of webinars. So yeah, that's just a bit around the reasoning. Just quickly in terms of introductions for those who haven't attended any of the previous webinars. So my name's Gavin Turnbull. I'm a managed services consultant who works here at CET. Mike?
Yeah, I'm Mike Owen. I'm a Modern Workplace Director with Yoko 10. So everything to do with the Microsoft 365 sort of stack, Power Platform included.
Cheers, Mike. And again, for those who haven't attended any of the previous webinars, just a bit of an introduction to Central Technology, to CT. We're a managed services organisation. We've been going for 22 years now. So we've got a lot of experience in the sector. We've been working with hospices, 30 of them plus, and charities and healthcare organisations since 2019. So we've built some services and solutions specifically for the sector over the last few years. And we're supporting organisations across the UK from our head office, which is in Derbyshire and Chesterfield, with additional branches in Leicester and Dorset. And it's all around our focus and our services underpinned by our strategic and partnership approach to technology and IT. And hopefully this webinar series will give you a bit of an insight into that. Some of the services that we provide are managed IT support. That's how we was born as a business 22 years ago. Cybersecurity solutions, cloud services and solutions, and then communication, so phone systems and connectivity. So just a bit of an insight into CT for those that don't know. I'm going to pass you over to Mike now to go through all the content around the Power Platform. And we'll pick up questions throughout. Over to you, Mike.
Thank you very much. Okay, so in terms of an agenda for this morning, we're going to have a bit of an introduction to the Power Platform and look at the kind of 3 key applications that are in it. There are more to it, but given the time limits, we're going to focus on these 3. We are picking up another one next week as it happens. So we'll have a bit of an overview, things to consider when rolling out the Power Platform, and then have a look at Power Automate in particular. What does it do? How do we start sort of using Power Automate, and then have a look at some demo scenarios around it. Same sort of thing with Power Apps. What is it? How can we use it? And show you some scenarios. And then similarly with Power BI. And then we'll have some time for Q&A at the end. So The Power Platform was introduced, I think about 2018 now, and it's basically grouping a number of products together under this one banner. Now, in terms of the applications that are included, we've got all of these, Microsoft term this kind of low-code platform applications. So we've got Power Apps, where we're able to go and create custom applications. We can build an application to go on your mobile, whereas previously mobile development costs were really quite expensive. So to have this very low code, drag and drop, sort of Excel formula style approach to development has really kind of opened it up. Power Automate is kind of the next pillar, if you will. Then there's always been workflow sort of within Microsoft, but it was mainly within SharePoint, and SharePoint of old, so like sort of 2007, 2010, there was a workflow engine built into SharePoint, but it would only affect data within SharePoint. Whereas Power Automate now can be connected to lots of services within Office 365, but it can also be connected to third-party services that you've got access to. We've then got Power BI. So Power BI is really about your reporting, analytics, dashboard creation. So how do I sort of look at the data that I've got and visualize that to really understand what's going on, instead of just having it sort of locked in a spreadsheet, maybe. Within one of the newer elements of the Power Platform, which is this idea of Power Pages. Microsoft's never really been particularly good at websites. SharePoint used to have a public-facing website element, pardon me, but that was removed in the 2013, something around that sort of time, just because there were better solutions out there for businesses. Now, Power Pages has come along to provide a bit of a front end to some of these applications to be able to gather people's information and log them in. So we're starting to see a bit of a resurgence in that kind of website, web applications process. And finally, we've got Copilot Studio. You may, if you're familiar with the Power Platform, have sort of seen mention of Power Virtual Agents. Well, Copilot Studio is the evolution of that. Virtual agents certainly let you have that guided conversation. So very similar if you think about like a telephone menu system, it will guide you through a certain process. Copilot Studio leverages AI in a much more sophisticated way to be able to create a bot that is very responsive to the conversation that you have with it. We're not actually going to cover that today. We've got a dedicated session next Wednesday where we'll look at all the different elements of Copilot and what it can bring to your organization. So all in, these tools are basically going to help you automate processes, develop applications, analyze data specific to your organization without having to spend huge amounts of money on license fees necessarily. As with all my webinars, I have to point out the governance side of things. And this is just because when you buy an Office 365 license with Microsoft, everything is automatically turned on. Microsoft want you to go and use all of these products and really get to grips with them. But at an organizational level, if we haven't got some clear sort of guidance and rules in place, these things can get out of control quite quickly once people understand the power the power in the Power Platform. So we really need to look at some of the governance side of things. Now, having that good governance strategy in place is going to keep your sensitive information protected. It's going to help people work sort of faster, more efficiently, less risk to the organization. So some of the mechanisms that we've got in terms of governance is that we can establish this idea of an environment strategy. And if you think about traditional software development, we would have a development environment, and then when we were ready, we would release it to like a test environment or a UAT environment, and then we might release it to a production live environment. Well, what we get with the Power Platform is that everyone automatically has access to a default environment, and there's no way to turn that off. However, you can then create additional environments. So I could have a test environment with limited access for people. I could then also have a production environment where I can grant access to those applications, those workflows that become sort of critical to the organization. Alongside environments, we can also put into place data loss prevention policies. Now, these are slightly different to the data loss prevention policies we were going through 2 weeks ago. So whereas within Purview, I can set up a data loss prevention policy that looks after my file or my email and says what I can and cannot do with it, the data loss prevention policies within the Power Platform say which data sources I can and cannot connect to. So I might be able to say within that default environment, yes, you can connect to your own mailbox, but you cannot connect to the SQL server that backs our clinical systems, for example. We then have to consider some of the licenses and the capacity side of things. Most of the Office 365, Microsoft 365 SKUs, the sort of licenses available, do have the Power Platform capabilities built into it, but it's definitely like the standard version. You have the ability to connect to Microsoft data sources and a few other sort of elements. If you need to do some more advanced workflows or connect to more premium data sources, that's where we have to consider additional licensing. And there's obviously a cost associated with that. Excuse me. So it's something definitely to consider, to be aware of, especially when we're starting to see a lot of traction with workflows within the organization. So to help with that, we do have some monitoring and usage tools that we can use in order to get a feel for what's going on within our environments. There's a Power Platform Admin Center to begin with, where as an IT professional, I can go in and have a look at all of the workflows within my environment. I can have a look at all of the apps within my environment as well, because if I developed a particular workflow and then I've started to share it with quite a few people, well, now we're seeing that workflow as a key point of reliance within the organization. So we've then got to wrap our arms around it a little bit, make sure that it's resilient and sort of built in a well-structured way. So having that ability to look at what has been created and potentially transfer it into a different environment to protect it is something that we need to be aware of. Now, to help with that monitoring, to help with the adoption side of things, Microsoft have provided a Center of Excellence starter kit. That starter kit includes some pre-built workflows that will sort of alert you to the fact that a new workflow has been created or a new app has been created within Power Apps. So then at least you're not always having to go looking and checking on a regular basis. You can have an email alert to be able to sort of be made aware of those things. So to really help get started with the Power Platform, what we need to be aware of is all of the adoption guides that Microsoft have for us. So I'm just going to switch screens quickly. So this one. So if you're not aware, Microsoft have got a dedicated website, adoption.microsoft.com, and that has got adoption guides for all the different workloads within the Microsoft 365 stack. But in particular, obviously we're focused on Power Platform today. There's a great workbook that sort of explains different steps that you could go through in terms of sort of engaging with the organization, upskilling people within the organization around the use of Power Automate or Power Apps. And there's also this one down here, this little link, the Centre of Excellence Planner. So the Centre of Excellence solution is linked within that, and that's where we've got some of those monitoring tools that we can start to use. Excuse me. Right. Okay. Right. So in terms of Power Automate then, this is our workflow tool. This is how we can start to automate some of our tasks instead of having to go through those same manual steps. Now, the main components of Power Automate are really that kind of environment side of things. So I said we've always got a default environment. That's kind of classed as your personal productivity area, if you will. Everyone has access to it so that you can build your own workflow to help the tasks that you understand about, the processes that you work with. How can I make it better for myself? And the reason we can't turn that off is that it is heavily integrated in with SharePoint. And we'll see some of that integration shortly in the demos. The second element is different types of workflow. So Power Automate can sort of be used within the cloud, and that's the most common one, definitely, where I want to build a workflow that's connected to SharePoint or connected to Outlook or whatever that process might be, but it runs just using cloud services. The second one is a desktop sort of workflow, where now it can start to work with applications that I've got sort of access to via my desktop. So it does require an add-in to sit on your device, on your laptop or workstation, but that can then start to enter data into older applications that might not have an API, might not have a way of integrating it via a kind of a cloud solution. And the third option is really sort of more for Dynamics 365, but this idea of business process flows and how we move maybe sort of patients through a particular stage within their care, for example. That's kind of like a business process flow. The third element that we've got within Power Automate is really the anatomy, if you like, of the workflow. Every workflow has some form of trigger. So that trigger is how the workflow is actually initiated. We've then got this idea of connections, because once I've got a workflow, I need to connect to some data, or maybe I need to integrate data from one system into another. So that's going to require multiple connectors in order to do that. And the last element is really the kind of meat of the workflow. It's the actions, what is actually going to happen with my data. Am I doing some sort of transformation here? Am I just copying certain elements? Am I moving files maybe? So the actions are the core of the workflow. And every application is going to have one or more triggers. It'll have one or more actions as well. So think about creating files, deleting files, moving files. They're all actions. So we'll have a look at some of those as we go through. In terms of the triggers side of things, first off, the triggers can be thought of in terms of like overnight processing. I want to schedule something in. So historically, we might have said, well, I'll have task scheduler on my laptop or on my server that's going to go and run a process. Well, now we can use Power Automate as a scheduled workflow to run that on a daily, weekly, monthly, or whatever cadence is required. But think in terms of like your overnight processing. Could we use Power Automate to do that? We then have this idea of instant workflows. So if I want to request approval on a document, that's an instant workflow. I'm starting that workflow right now at that point in time. And finally, we've got automated workflows. So when this event happens, automatically go and do this series of actions. So we'll have a look at an example of that in a moment. There are actually a few others, but they're the most sort of common triggers that we'd use. Now, the connectors side of things, this is where we start to see a bit of complexity more around the kind of the licensing side of things. So we've got 4 levels, if you like, of connector. And the connector is how Power Automate is going to talk to a different service. So the built-in ones are sort of standard Power Automate connectors. They're standard actions like how can I do loops? How can I do conditional sort of logic within my workflow? The standard connectors are pre-licensed because you've already got access to SharePoint, and you've got access to Outlook, you've got access to OneDrive. Those are classed as standard connectors. They're already part of your license, so you can connect to those freely. The premium ones are where we start to see additional licensing being required. This includes things like third-party connectors. Maybe I want to connect to Adobe to manipulate a PDF, or maybe I want to connect to a SQL server in order to export some data and move it somewhere else. They are premium connectors, so you would require additional licensing for those. And finally, you can actually have completely custom connectors. So if you had a system that does have an API and you've got developer resource, you can create some custom connectors to link your Power Automate workflow through to your custom application. It is possible, it's just requires developer experience, whereas the rest of it is very much that kind of power user focus. You'd be able to achieve it with a bit of knowledge without being a developer. So there's 2 main ways of being able to create a workflow. I'll go through both in the demo shortly, but you can either go directly to the Power Automate app. So once you're logged into Office 365 and you go to the app launcher in the top left, you should see Power Automate as an option. And from there, we can either start with a blank canvas or we can start with one of Microsoft's templates to really kind of accelerate your process. Alternatively, we can actually start directly from a Microsoft list or a SharePoint document library within Teams or within SharePoint. So I'll show you both of those scenarios as well in a moment. Now, I've touched on this already as part of the connectors, but just to kind of draw your attention to it a little bit. Most licenses already have access to Power Automate Standard. Where we start to need more advanced connectors like your SQL Server, your third party, that's where the Power Automate Premium license comes in. Now, because if you have a process that the whole organization starts to use, well, now in theory, you have to license everybody who makes use of that process. So if I create a workflow and it requires premium connectors and 10 other people use that workflow or take advantage of it, now I need to license all 10 of those people as well. So this is where we actually have this idea of a process license. So I can create a single workflow, license it with a Power Automate process license, and then I don't need to have premium licensing for everybody. But as you can see, it's a significant amount of money over your sort of base license cost. The hosted process is a slightly newer license where now we'll actually host it within an Azure virtual machine as well. So you don't even have to have it within your environment. It's completely separate. You can increase the process capabilities on that. So let's have a little look at some scenarios here. If I go into Power Automate, the home screen that I get to begin with is going to give me some information around some of the commonly used templates. It's going to give me learning, sort of, so I can start to accelerate my capabilities here. But I've also got a number of templates that I can use quite quickly. So here I've got hundreds of different options, and you can see within each of these cards the connectors that it's going to ask for credentials. So maybe say, well, I want to look for things to do with Office 365 mail, and that will give me a kind of a short list of things that I've got available. Let's say,
Mike, I don't know if you're on the demo screen or not. I can't see the demo screen.
You're absolutely right. I apologise. Hang on. Let's try that again. Sure. Excellent. Okay now? So yeah, from the home screen, if you go and look at templates, we've got a huge number of pre-built templates. If I want to try and automate a particular option, let's say, okay, every time I receive an attachment on email, I want to go and save it into OneDrive. So I can go and click on this template. It's going to sign in to Outlook and sign into OneDrive using my credentials. So I'll say continue. And this is going to build out that workflow for me in a sort of very basic way. So here I've got my trigger that says, anytime I receive an email, go and take a look at it, figure out who it's from maybe, and then go and save it. So if I quickly say, well, if I receive an email from mike@yokoten.com, I want you to go and save it in a particular location. So this is looking at my OneDrive, and I can see I want to go and put it in this attachments folder. So let's go and save that. And separately, if I quickly trigger an email to come through. Once we've published that workflow, We can then actually look at the overview screen of it to be able to see when it gets triggered. Now, I've sent an email across at some point. My Outlook will receive it and we'll be able to sort of come back and take a look at that shortly. Okay. Whilst we're waiting for that, one of those where the watch pot never boils when you want it to. Right. Okay. So instead, let's have a look also then at the document approval side of things. So instead of starting from Power Automate, I'm in a SharePoint site, and within that SharePoint site, we've got some documents. Now, if everyone's got access to these documents, I want to make sure that it's gone through some sort of approval cycle, some sort of way of double checking what's going on here. So within every document library, you're able to go in and configure approvals. Now, this is a very sort of basic approval flow. And if I go turn this on, it will add some additional columns into my document library. So I can see here I've got an approval status. If I also go and show or hide some of the columns, I can see who's approved it, responses, things like that. And so I'll just add those to this. Now, this is an example of an immediate trigger, because I want to sort of have this particular document automatically approved. So when I select my document, I can say I want to request an approval of the menu. And then this is going to sort of say to me, well, how do you want this built-in approval to work? Do you want a list of approvers in a particular order? Or do you just want to provide a single approver in here? Or maybe even I want a multiple sort of, I've got a few people who can approve, but I don't want everyone. I just want the first person to approve, but send it out in that way. So let's move. Now, this is going to be using the Approvals app within Microsoft Teams. So it's creating this approval request. We can see that we've got our status still is not submitted at the moment, but all of that will automatically change as it goes through. Okay. Typically, no idea where that email has gone. It's definitely gone. As and when it turns up, we'll pick up that element instead. Okay. That's interesting, because even though it said it hasn't generated it, my other user has actually got the request. So I'm going to prove it on the other side and just see whether that does flow through correctly. Maybe it hasn't done. So the approval window over here, it can see that approval was sent to multiple people. Sorry, let me just expand that a bit more. You can see that it was sent to the admin and also my Lynn Robbins user, sent by me, and we can also see that it's also been approved in that way. So if I switch back to my original document library view, I can now see the document has been approved. You can see the approvers who submitted the approval, all that sort of information is captured as part of that request. Now you can set up a document library to say, well, only show approved documents to the rest of the organization. So the majority of people are not going to see these non-submitted documents until we're ready to actually show those to people. All right. And the third example that I wanted to go through is a kind of an extension on some data, a very simple way that we might have kind of alerting to certain key dates. So here I've got a list of assets within my organization, and we've seen organizations sort of store this in terms of spreadsheets and trying to track what's going on in that way. But a Microsoft list is basically a spreadsheet. I've got a number of columns that we can see at the top here, and then I've got a number of rows which we can start to drive workflows against. Now, built in to Microsoft lists, I've got this idea of a rule. And a rule is a very simple way of creating effectively a workflow. So if I say I want to look at being alerted, well, being alerted 30 days before the warranty event, and just send it to me. So now I can have this rule set up that is going to look at each of those lines and on a scheduled basis say, right, now I need to generate an email to Mike because we've got a warranty on our snooze deck bed or whatever it is. But if that doesn't give us exactly what we need, we've still got the ability to say, well, go and create me a proper, go and look at a proper workflow using Power Automate rather than just the rules engine that's kind of built into Microsoft Lists. So I might want to say, well, send me an email when a new item has been added, or maybe it's a request, that kind of approval request, but it needs to be more than just a quick yes or no. There's multiple stages to it, let's say, it's something along those lines. So from here, that will then go and open that similar experience in Power Automate that will allow me to create a proper workflow and really be able to control how that actually works. Let's switch back to the deck then. So, right. Are there any questions at the moment, Gab?
Yeah, we've got a couple that were sent beforehand. We're looking at workflow that needs premium licenses, but they're expensive. Are there any other options?
Yeah, it was sort of, yeah, yes and no. Within Power Automate, yeah, you've got that kind of process license, let's say, but you're looking at about £115 per month for that. Another option that you have that's not within the Power Platform is Microsoft have a platform called Azure. And with Azure, you have a different licensing model. So we can use something called Logic Apps within Azure, which is a workflow tool, but you can use it on a consumption basis. So similar to that process license, but instead of being a fixed £115 a month, if it only runs once a month, but it affects lots of people, look at using Logic Apps instead, because that's consumption licensing instead of per user licensing, actually.
Nice. There's one on there, I think, relating to a previous webinar as well, Microsoft Shifts. And a question around, could we use Power Automate to remove that data into our payroll systems?
Yeah, okay. So there are actions within Power Automate for teams and for shifts specifically. So you can get into the data stored within Microsoft Shifts. It would then be manipulating into a CSV form or connecting to the API of your payroll system in order to get that data from Shifts into payroll. But it's certainly possible. It's possible to get data into Teams as well. So if you've got a third-party annual leave system, let's say, you can say go and generate annual leave in Shifts for a set person. Right, let's move on. Power Apps then. So Power Apps is more the development environment to create an application, create a solution, rather than having to buy something off the shelf. It's very much low code. If you know Excel formulas, you're going to be able to pick this up sort of reasonably easily. We're still able to connect to multiple data sources. So in a similar way to Power Automate, if I want to bring information in from SharePoint or push information out to another data source, I can do that through those data connectors. It is also automatically designed for responsive design. And what I mean by that is that historically you might build an application that would work on your desktop. But if you were then wanting to have that on your mobile or on a tablet, you'd have to maybe have a different app or a different way of sort of working with that app, and it might not look as good. Responsive design allows us to create one application and then it automatically scales up or scales down to work with the device that you're using at that time. So very powerful. Responsive design used to be quite expensive to do. This really kind of democratizes it, I suppose, is the best way of putting it. Makes it a lot cheaper, easier to achieve. We've also got integration into Power Automate. We want to sort of build out some workflows as part of our app. And we can also, with pro developer sort of capability, really connect into a much wider set of services that are available out there. Similarly to Power Apps, there are a couple of license tiers available. If I've created an app that requires some of that premium licensing, if it's integrating with a SQL Server, if it's integrating with Dataverse, the data storage platform within Power Automate, Power Apps, that's where we need that premium license. There is that a Power Apps premium minimum seat requirement license, which brings the cost down, but you're at 2,000 seats before you qualify for that. So most of the apps are probably going to be achievable just with the standard. It very much depends on your individual requirements. So again, how do we get started? Well, we can go directly to Power Apps, start from a template, start from a blank canvas, or we can use some of the integrate capabilities to amend how our forms work within SharePoint. So let's go back over to let's go back over to the demo environment. So on my asset list, if I say I want to add a new item, I'm going to get the standard form here. So I've got the name, I've got the asset ID, but I've also got this currently booked and booking end date. So I can sort of loan things out. I want to loan out recliner chairs and things like that. But when I'm adding an asset, I don't want those to show. So I've got a few different options here. Out of the box, I can automatically say I want to edit the columns to hide those related to booking. So if I save it, if I save it here, I've now automatically hidden those columns on my new asset form. So that's a kind of easy to achieve step. If I want to take it a stage further though, and say, well, I want to change how that actually looks, I do have an option to customize the forms. Now, the customized form is going to bring that form into Power Apps so that I can now take that basic layout, that very kind of single column approach, and I can then start to move some of those elements around a little bit more, make it a little bit easier to see. Right, let's go sign in. And obviously, this is the connector saying, I want to use your credentials, Michael, to connect to SharePoint within Power Apps. So I'll allow that. And now this is going to show me, let's skip that, a fairly standard form. Now, within this form, I'd already started to kind of manipulate it a little bit. For every data entry point, we've got this idea of a card, and that card will always have a title for the column, the data that you're editing, and a way of editing, a way of interacting with it, whether it's a text box or whether it's like a date control, something like that. The first step we have to do is go and say, I want to unlock this. So now I can start to amend some of those properties. Now on this one down here, the way it was originally set was something a little bit more like that, where it was in that tabular format. And instead, if I want to change this, I've got properties like the width and the height, and I can start to say, well, make this a little bit narrower and make the height a little bit shorter. Right. And then I can also drag this control around. So if I want to sit it up here or I want to put it alongside my active warranty warnings, I can do that. And it's still very kind of drag and drop in order to achieve what we want to do. Now, when I was saying about the Excel-like formula, if I go and look at a particular control, I've got a list of properties, a list of things associated with that control, like the width, like the height. But then I've also got, well, what's the default information that's going to be shown here? So at the moment, it's always going to show the warranty date. But instead, we could have, we can do sort of formulas in here that would say, if the warranty date is null, then I want to put today's date in, or keep the warranty date as it is. So these formulas are very kind of there's something called IntelliSense to help you build those formulas out. If you're missing elements, it would tell you. So you can see it started to underline this to say what it's expecting, and the if will say, okay, you need some more arguments in here in order to build it out. So it does provide you with a lot of assistance when you're building out those formulas to help guide your experience. if I then say I want to go back to SharePoint and I want to save and publish my changes to this particular form, this will then be reflected within my asset list. So now when I go and I say I want to add a new item to that list, it's going to go and render that Power App form for me. So now I can see I've got my my warranty details in line, and instead of it being that very single column linear approach. Another way we can approach Power App development, though, is in the same way as with Power Automate. We've got a few templates that are available. Now, when you click on these, it shows you what it is, what it will do. So in a very Blue Peter, here's one I made earlier approach. Here's the booking, a book a room app. It's pre-created, it's there. It looks at Excel, and it doesn't. It looks at Exchange for your room resources. So if you've got a number of meeting rooms within your different offices, as long as you've got those within Exchange as bookable resources, you can then start to say, well, I want to go and book a meeting for that. So it will look at my diary to say, oh, you've got no meetings booked for today, but I'm like, well, I just want to create a new one. So a book without an actual meeting appointment. I want to book room 1. It's like, great, okay, it's set up that request for me. Now that will actually generate an email in sort of back to me as the meeting room organizer. It will also put it in the calendar for that meeting room resource. So a nice, neat way of being able to do it without. Right, there we go. So I've got my meeting room was accepted. Finally, my email did get through. So the flow that we've got. Okay, I can see the flow did actually pick up that new email, and when you look at a flow that's already run, you'll see the steps that it's gone through. Green ticks are good, red ticks, okay, something's gone wrong, and see that it's gone and tried to create all of those files for me. If I quickly switch to OneDrive and look at my files, and I stored it all in the attachments folder, I can see that I've got my Power Platform Centre of Excellence presentation that I sent across. It's also tried to capture my signature images as well, which might need some work, but hey. So going back to Power Apps, if I'm not using a pre-created app, and instead I want to actually look at how do I create an app for the data that I've already got. I've got my my asset list up here, and maybe I want to build a nice mobile app so that I can use this on the go without being in SharePoint. So I can say, well, I want to go and create an app. I want to start with the data. And then if we grab the URL, we grab the URL of that list. Right, I'm going to connect some external data from SharePoint. I can put the URL in. It will show me all of the lists that are available within that site, and then it will automatically build me a simple app that I can go and work with. So if I connect to this site, I've got my resourcing, I've got my assets, and say, go create that app. So it'll take you a couple of seconds to actually go and sort of look at the data, go and build it. But we're going to get a fairly functional app that allows us to create and edit and delete assets in line with what we've got in within our list. So here we go. Here's our list of assets. Now, if I move from this editing experience to preview the app to actually use it, I can see that I can sort of click through and it will show me about my easy sleep bed and the warranty around it. But what I can then do is change the device that I'm using. So up here, I'm not going to rebuild the app for the sake of using it on a phone. So just show me what it would look like if I've got an Apple device. So let's change the layout of the app, no coding necessary, to be able to say, okay, give me the list of all of the assets. And then when I click through, now show me the specifics of that particular asset. And if I click on the pencil, right, now I can sort of start to look at editing them instead and sort of deactivating warranties or sort of manipulating them that way. Now, obviously, all of that is part of that responsive design experience. So similarly, I could say I want to look at it on an iPad mini. And again, automatically done for you. You don't need to sort of understand how responsive design works. It will just do it for you. So moving on, the last component that we're going to cover today is the Power BI side of things. So with Power BI, this is how we're going to create some interactive dashboards and reports to really start making those data-driven decisions. I want to be able to kind of visualize my asset data. I want to visualize some patient data maybe. So how can we do that? So it will let us connect to a number of different data sources. Having the data all in one great big giant sort of data warehouse is obviously going to give you a lot more capability around your reporting across multiple systems. It's also quite a big involved project, but we can start small and sort of build up to this. So we've got capabilities to visualize and analyze data built into SharePoint lists. We can then look at connecting other data into our reports. We can also start tweaking those visualizations to say, well, I prefer to see it as a bar graph or a pie chart or however it might be. So, and as before, with all of the Power Platform applications, we've got that integration back into our other Microsoft tools if we need to. Now, from a licensing perspective, all of the Microsoft 365, Office 365 licenses have access to Power BI Desktop. Think of that as your free standard license. It allows you to go and create reports, create dashboards, link to your data sources to do that. However, the limitation here is you can't share those dashboards. That's where you need a Power BI Pro license to be able to collaborate on your reports and dashboards and share them with other people within Power BI. Now, if you want to start to share some of those reports wider than that, I want to share it within maybe a SharePoint site, embed the reports and dashboards within that experience instead. That's when we're stepping up to a Power BI Premium or even the Power BI Embed license. Now, Power BI Embed, I'd say it varies on the requirements, because if you're doing a lot of reporting, integrating a lot of data sources here, that's where we've got effectively tiers of processing that you can license in order to make sure your reporting is always up to date. But that can become quite expensive, depending on your requirements here. So let's take a look at a basic example to start with, and I'll also show you a pre-built Microsoft healthcare example as well. Let's go back to our asset list, and from within the asset list, I want to be able to integrate this with Power BI. So it says, oh, you can visualize this list. Okay, let's have a look. Now, this is going to put together a very sort of basic report for me. So it's going to have a look at all the data. I could go through and sort of properly choose the columns that I want, but I still get the option afterwards as well. So here I can see we've got counts of assets by year, or counts of assets by year and month. Okay, well, I want to add in a metric around the asset type. So if I click on, lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Right, let's just refresh that. I can effectively go through and add in some of the other columns that are available. So that will add additional metrics onto this report. So now I've got this count of assets by type, but I'd rather see that in a different way. So let's change how we visualize this. So this visualization type is going to let me change to, maybe a pie chart would be better for this. So now I can see what that split of assets is within my organization. If I'm really happy with this particular dashboard and I wanted to be able to share that with other people, I can now say I want to be able to publish this back to the list. So here's my dashboard. I go and refresh my asset list over here. When I go back to that integrate menu, and when I go back to the integrate menu and look at the Power BI side of things, I've now got that pre-built dashboard that I can allow other people to use, subject to licensing. Now that's obviously a very simple approach. During the pandemic, Microsoft put together a series of dashboards that you could link through to your own data to help with obviously that COVID response within the organization. So this is a sample dashboard that allows us to see, well, what happens if I want to start filtering by specific facilities or departments within facilities. So by selecting on this acute care, it's going to pre-filter all of the other sort of elements of this report just by Alpine East General Hospital acute care department. So it allows us to sort of drill down into the data to be able to say, to see how certain departments are performing, or maybe we're looking at assets. So let's look at bed management and be able to say, okay, well, what are available beds within a certain department, and then sort of have that that report be pre-filtered based on the elements that I'm selecting within the report. So it is a very powerful tool, and frankly, I don't think I've done it justice within the sort of time we've allowed in the webinar here, but it is to help you understand what's going on in the organization. It's obviously a sort of a really good tool in your arsenal to be aware of. So with that, is there any other questions at this point? Then we can start to answer some of those. I appreciate we've gone a little bit over that time. Okay, so the question: what's the difference between the desktop and web version of Power Automate? So the desktop version of Power Automate is going to allow you to interact with applications that you have on your desktop or that you have access to. Think of it a bit like recording a macro of old, where you'd be able to click through certain elements, fill in data, click submit. That's what Power Automate Desktop will let you do. It will let you identify an application to open, identify fields within that application that you want to pre-fill or fill in data, and it will then automate that process for you. Power Automate in the web, that cloud version, doesn't have that interactivity with your desktop. It is just cloud services. Anything else, Gav? You got anything else to cover off?
Sorry, just unmute myself. Yeah. No, that's been really, really good, Mike. Interesting around the Power App side of things. Again, speaking to different hospices, knowing that all the different departments work in different ways, and all have different sort of tools and jobs and deliverables. The Power Platform, I think it'd be really interesting as a concept to look at for the sector itself. So now it's been really, really good. So yeah, thanks again. Conscious of time. Thanks for attending, everybody. It's been really good. The next and last session is going to be next week. So that's on the 7th of May, same time. We're going to be looking at utilising Copilot in the hospice sector. As always, though, we'll send an email after this with the recording and the link to the webinar. And if anybody does want to get in touch, we'd really encourage people to get in touch to set up one-to-one meetings around anything that you've seen over the past 3 sessions and today, and anything else from a technology IT perspective. You know, if you're reviewing your IT services in general or IT solutions, please get in touch. We've got some specialist services and solutions that we've built for the hospice sector over the years. So it'd be really interesting to just book an initial meeting or call with you around that. And next week, it'll actually be Mike, and then it'll be our MD, our CEO, Ian Snow, will be doing the introductions at the beginning rather than myself. I'll actually be attending the Together for Shorter Lives conference, which is in Manchester next Wednesday. So if anybody is attending who are on the webinar, please, or if any of your colleagues are, please pop over and say hello. But again, thanks for attending today. It's been really, really good. Thank you, Mike, for going through all that. It's been really interesting. And yeah, look forward to seeing everybody next week. Thank you.
Thank you all.